The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everybody. How wonderful to be speaking to you again this evening on our third part of our NLP for Kids webinar series. If you wouldn't mind, please just ping me over a hello in the questions box so that I know that you can see it. Shannon's done it already. She knows the drill. So just send over a hello so I know that you're there. Wonderful. So we've got 12 people here already this evening, which is fantastic. Amanda, Anna, Florence, Kate, Monica, Rob, Sarah, Serena, Shannon, Tina, and Wesley. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining me this evening. I'm going to share my screen with you right now. Again, just send me over a yes so that I know that you can see it. Let me go back to my questions so I can see your responses. Yes, perfect. All right, so let me just move your questions out the way, hit play, and there we go. So this evening is all about the monumental topic that is confidence. And sadly, we only have an hour and a half to cram in as much as we possibly can around this subject area. This is a huge topic, and obviously I've planned our webinar for this evening, but then I always get these little ideas filtering through right before, like the final few minutes just before we're about to get started. And I was just evaluating the clients that I work with, because one of the questions that I ask, be it to adults or children, one of the questions that I ask them during the consultation phase when they come to see me with whatever their problem or challenge may be, is I say, if there were one thing that you could either learn, something you could change about yourself, or maybe something that you could make stronger and reinforce in yourself, what would that one thing be? If there was a magic potion that I could give you that would ultimately sort this problem out, what emotion would need to be in that potion that I gave to you? Now, whether they are talking to me about giving up smoking, whether they're talking to me about the fact that they're being bullied, whether they're talking to me about their anxiety, it doesn't really matter. The one common factor in the answer to that question around what's the emotional magic potion I could give you or reinforce and make stronger is confidence. Confidence is absolutely huge. So here is how today is going to work out for us. So for those of you who may be new to this evening's webinar, my name is Gemma Bailey. I'm the director of NLP for Kids. NLP for Kids is a children's franchise. So we train people in how to apply NLP, specifically for working with children and young people. NLP standing, of course, for Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which is made up of lots of different strategies, tools and techniques and methodologies for helping us to change our attitude, to have more emotional resilience and better communication skills, amongst a whole host of other things. Our practitioners go out into the world of schools and deliver workshops and one-to-one sessions there. They also tend to have private therapy practices where they see young people and work with their parents too, and also deliver workshops in the local community. In addition, some of our practitioners work with parents and teachers. In terms of how you can be involved with the work of NLP for Kids, obviously we've got all of the social media stuff going on, so we love interacting with you there. Plus we have these webinars, so if you are only signed up for this evening's one, or you've perhaps just downloaded this particular recording, there are 3 others, which at this point, 2 of them have done. We've got one more coming up next week. Plus we have the NLP for Kids Discovery Days that take place typically on the last Saturday of each month, where you can find out more about our training programs and potentially becoming a licensed practitioner too. So from this particular webinar series, our focus is essentially all around mental health and well-being, and you know, the kind of key players that sit within that sphere. So we've looked at anxiety so far, we've looked at communication. Tonight is obviously all about confidence, and next week we'll be looking at the mental health and well-being side of things a bit more generically. So after this evening, I will be uploading the webinar to our YouTube channel, where it will be tucked away in a private listing. You will be given access to that listing as someone who has purchased this webinar, and it will not be visible to the rest of the world, although we will give them just a little taster to get them intrigued and interested and hopefully signing up for the full version of it. So I would like to know who you are. I know who some of you are because you've been on the previous webinars, but if you haven't told me already, I would like to know, are you a parent? Are you a professional? If so, what kind of a professional are you? Are you a hypnotherapist? Are you working with children who are in school in some capacity? So who have we got here this evening? A learning placement manager? That sounds interesting. Amanda, what's a learning placement manager? I don't think I've come across that job title before. And there are many, many different job titles when it comes to the world of school. Ping me over a message to tell me what that means. Parent, I know what that one does. Learning support mentor, very nice. So it seems to be the case that in terms of the people that are showing up for these webinars, we're getting lots of people who are from, perhaps a more professional angle in terms of their reasons for being here. And that's good to know for us because it tells us that CPD is important to you, as it is to our NLP for Kids team too. All right, so let's get started then with our content for this evening. As usual, we will get started initially by looking at the big fat reason why confidence problems show up in the first place. Now, this is by no means all of the potential reasons. Certainly, we could drill down into some real nitty-gritty, very highly specific reasoning too. But here's some generic ones which I've certainly come across rather a lot. So a learned behaviour from a family member. Do you know what? I think that has been the first one that has shown up on the list in every single webinar so far, which tells us that, we've got a lot to thank our parents for, doesn't it? Because we pick up so much from them. So again, it's those mirror neurons kicking in, teaching us about how we need to behave in certain contexts, and we pick that up completely unconsciously from our family and from others around us as well. So a lack of confidence is something that we might model from someone else. It might be, something that a child develops as a result of observing it in other people. Sometimes there may be a one-time negative event. In NLP terms, we refer to that as a significant emotional event. So something which happens just as a one-off, but it was bad enough that it knocks that young person's confidence in a drastic way, such that they're not able to pick themselves up and move on from it. So it causes an ongoing problem with their confidence, even though the event just happened once. There may also be multiple smaller knocks that happen that start to chip away at confidence over time. So for example, if a young person is bullied at school over a long period of time, and they hear perhaps negative comments about themselves, that would chip away at their confidence over time. Sometimes we see that confidence becomes a problem because there is someone else in their immediate circle who is more confident than they are, and it kind of overshadows them. It overshadows who they are. It causes them to make comparisons between how that other person is and how they are. And when they start making those comparisons, they say, so-and-so so much more confident than me. And because then they see a deficit, they focus on the deficit rather than what they can do and how much confidence they have got. Now, this is actually really easily done. I was mentioning this to a friend just the other day, in that so sometimes what we see when there are groups of young people and adults, so any kind of groups of people, is we see something where there is maybe someone who takes the lead in that group and has more influence over the rest of them. So we looked at this, I think, in our very first webinar around anxiety. So your rapport leaders, you'll remember that they're called. Now, sometimes the rapport leader will be so good at rapport leading that they will be able to override and overshadow other people in that group who might ordinarily have quite a lot of confidence. So for me, for example, I can be in a training room and I can run a training group and I can, be in control in that situation. But there are certain groups of friends and family that I might spend time with where there are big characters, quite big flamboyant characters. And when I'm with those people, I'll maybe step into the shadows a little bit more and hang out in the background more than I would do if I were the one taking the lead and in charge in a training room environment. Now, it would be very easy for me when I'm with those more flamboyant characters to think, wow, where's my confidence gone today? But actually, I know that it's a context-dependent thing, so it doesn't bother me. For a young person who perhaps doesn't have that same level of perspective, they might suddenly realise, gosh, there's someone here who's so much more confident than me. Clearly my confidence is gone for good. So sometimes when we make comparisons, we can do it in a way that affects us negatively. Now, actually, we can also do the flip side. So comparative thinking can be an incredibly useful thing. If you look at someone who has no confidence whatsoever and compare them to yourself, and maybe, that young person just has a minimal level of confidence, but that's still more than someone who has none whatsoever, which means that then they can make a positive comparison and start thinking to themselves, actually, maybe I'm more confident than I thought I was. And from there, they start to focus on what they have rather than what they lack, and that gives a much better opportunity for their confidence to continue to grow. And finally, here we've got a lack of skill. Now, the reason why I've put that there is because actually, confidence is a skill set. This is something that we all can have access to if we know how to get to it. So it's really a case of learning how to access it, how to nurture it, how to focus on it growing, and how to pick ourselves up when we receive the inevitable knocks to it from time to time that show up just as a result of life happening. So confidence is a skill. We need to know how to access it. Now, sometimes what happens when we have a young person who is perhaps suffering with some kind of lack of confidence issue is we spend a lot of time asking them questions around what that feels like, how they do that lack of confidence, or how they do the anxiety or the fear or whatever it is that the opposite of confidence is for them. And we get a really good idea about how they do not being confident. What we need to know is how they do confidence. So we need to know that strategy because confidence is a skill. So we need to know what the strategy is that takes them into that confidence so that later when it's not there, they know what sequence of steps to go through to get themselves back to the confidence that they want to have. I hope that makes sense. All right, so how do we identify a confidence deficiency? There are many, many different ways, and I'm going to give you a few other suggestions in just a moment. But I wanted to share this with you because it popped back into my mind as being a useful tool that I'd come across before. And this was in a school where it was a while back now, but actually it was a school where they were already big advocates for emotional intelligence. And so this is in a primary school, we would use obviously different methods for different age groups. But what they did in the school was they gave the children these worksheets, so just like the one you're seeing on the screen here now, they gave them these worksheets to colour in, and on the worksheets there were children just like them doing the various different sorts of things that children might do on a playground in a school. And they got them to colour it in initially, and then they sat them down for some one-to-one chit-chats to say, in this picture, which of these children most seems like you? So essentially, this is a nice, gentle way of starting to inquire about how that child perceives their own confidence levels. Because what we can see in a picture like this is we've got some children who are completely by themselves. We've got some children who are perhaps interacting with other children in a positive way, face to face, lots of rapport going on. We've got some children who are